Hello, everyone. I just want to reiterate a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for coming despite the difference in venue tonight. It's so great to see you all. My name is Emily, and this is Rob, and we're your hosts for this evening. And yeah, we're part of the CU community here in Southampton.
Yeah, and just to let you a little bit know about this evening, Ollie will be coming up in a moment to lead us through our talk and some discussion time, and at the end there will be plenty of time afterwards to discuss or get to know each other more with tea and coffee and cake provided after, so feel free to stick around for as long as you'd like. So yeah, I'll just hand over to Ollie.
Thank you, guys. Oh, thank you. Not sure if that's for me or for them, but I'll take it. For those of you I've not met, my name is Ollie. I live just beneath the BT Tower in central London with my wife, Katie, and a tiny hamster who I love even more than Kanye loves Kanye. I work with students for a church in front of the BBC, and I do that because I think that university is a great time to think seriously about questions that really matter. So I'm thrilled to see that you guys are up for that. And I want to suggest that I think Jesus is good news for students like yourselves, wherever you're from, whatever you're studying, and however you're feeling this evening, because the good news of Jesus is as big as the universe and as personal as your closest friend. And this is what the CU has invited me to speak about today. The title for this evening's talk is Finding Freedom When I Am Not Okay. Does God care about me? And here's my proposal. I want to convince you that Christianity uniquely has the resources to offer the sort of peace that you can build your life on. But it's worth saying at this point, there are going to be parts of this talk that get pretty bleak. The reason for that is that if we're going to find the sort of peace that holds together even when we are not okay, well, we're going to need to be honest about what's actually going on when I'm not okay. So let's make a start. And I want to begin by asking you a 500-year-old question. It's a question from a document that helped set the course of Protestant Christianity since it was written in 1563, and it's this. What is your biggest comfort in life? There are so many ways that I could answer this question. Filter coffee, small spaces full of books, the Gentle Rain playlist on Spotify, hamsters, every song from every album that Taylor Swift has ever released, and most recently, wonder if you've discovered this, videos of people repairing shoes on YouTube. Has anyone ever watched those? Just put a hand in the air. A handful. The rest of you are in for a great evening when you get home. Google that one. Honestly, it's a whole mood. But if we're talking my biggest comfort in life, then right near the top of that list would be the 20th of December, the day when I am in charge, the day when no one can tell me what to do, the day that belongs to me, my birthday. Something you should know about me, in the deepest, most definitive parts of who I am a massive introvert, but Katie, my wife, less so. For those of you who know about Myers-Briggs personality test, her 4 letters are E-E-E-E. Here's how the conversation went in December 2019, the year I moved to London. She said to me, I could take the day off if you wanted for your birthday, said Katie, the extrovert who enjoys the company of other people. Now, don't worry about it. There's really no need, said I, the introvert who's triggered by social situations. It's really no problem, said she, and she had love in her eyes. I would prefer to be alone, said I, eyes full of fear. Eventually, she gave in because she's weak and she actually cares what people think about her, whereas I apparently know no shame. And friends, I had the time of my young life. I woke up and no one had any expectations of me. I went to a coffee shop in Fitzrovia, just near where I live, and just sat by myself alone, doing nothing, without anyone expecting me to. I took a pile of books. Honestly, I didn't even read them because I didn't have to. I was a free man. The day belonged to me, and I was at peace. So here are my opening 2 questions for you to discuss around your tables. Number 1, what is your biggest comfort in life? And number 2, where do you look when you need peace of mind? 4 or 5 minutes to discuss those on your tables. If you were to ask me, to me, peace of mind is the 20th of December, the day when I'm in charge, the day when no one can tell me what to do, the day when I can sit in a coffee shop with a huge pile of great books that I'm not even going to read and just slip from hour after hour watching videos of middle-aged men repair shoes. Because it's the 20th of December, which means that that day belongs to me. But the problem for me, sitting in that coffee shop in Fitzrovia in December 2019, was that I kept getting sudden chest pains. Since birth, I've had a condition called aortic stenosis. Essentially, the aortic valve has literally one job, and mine isn't doing it. Without medical help, my heart, I want to say, gurgles like a toddler with a Frappuccino. I should have died when I was 7. Praise the Lord for the NHS. But here's what that's meant for me. I've known since childhood that I cannot find peace by looking inside myself. My heart is the problem, not the solution. It struggles enough with basic biology. Adding emotional resilience to its to-do list might just push it over the edge. I love the 20th of December because that day is mine. And I imagine that many of my friends in London, at least, if they were to honestly answer that 500-year-old question that we began with, might reflect something of a similar attitude in their answers. What is my biggest comfort in life? Well, my biggest comfort in life is that I am my own, that I belong body and soul to me, and I can take whatever life has to throw at me. It's the sort of answer that tells me to treat my whole life like it's the 20th of December, finding peace in the thought that my life belongs to me, taking comfort in the idea that my life is mine and I'm in charge of it. But as someone who will need repeated major heart surgery throughout my life, I just don't think that's a good answer. And I want to unpack a little bit about why I don't think that answer works by stating the problem with it as bluntly as possible. Bluntly put, if your peace of mind depends on you, it will fail you in the very moment you need it most. I used to think that peace of mind was a fragile thing. I used to think you had to handle peace with care. Don't overthink it or it'll scurry off. Keep it away from your doubts or it might get offended. Don't let it know about science and definitely don't let it read the news. Peace of mind, well, it's the sort of substance that will evaporate on contact with question marks or with facts. Do you remember those magic eye optical illusions that you pretended you could do at school, where there would just be a ton of colours that looked like someone had thrown up Haribo on the page, and then you'd look slightly past it while crossing your eyes, and suddenly you'd see a spaceship flying out of the page, or if you're like me, pretend to see a spaceship flying out the page? That is what I thought peace of mind was like. It's there, maybe, but only if you can turn off your inner cynic and go slightly cross-eyed. The rest of the time, you just have to lie. Oh yeah, 3D peace of mind, it's good, isn't it? And the reason I thought that is that I thought my peace of mind was something I was in charge of, which meant that my main job was to protect my peace of mind from everything that might threaten it. See, the only way I can keep charge of my life while living in a world that is as out of control as this one is by shutting my eyes to it. So here's the next set of questions for us to discuss on our tables. Number one, do you find the idea that you're in charge of your own life comforting? Why or why not? Secondly, do you resonate with the idea that peace of mind is fragile? And thirdly, how do you try to hold on to peace of mind in the midst of the troubles of this world? 4 or 5 more minutes on our tables to discuss those questions. The only way I can keep charge of my life while living in a world that is as out of my control as this one, well, it's by shutting my eyes to it, which is why I used to think you had to handle peace with care. But I don't think that anymore, and here's one big reason why. If you can't stamp on your peace of mind, then ultimately it is useless to you. Actually, worse than that, if you can't stamp on your peace of mind, then it will fail you in the very moment that you need it most. If you can't throw your full weight against your peace of mind without it breaking, then it will fail you in the very moment that you need it most, when your life is in free fall. Because if your peace of mind depends on you, well, it will fail as soon as you do. If your peace needs you to be strong, what will happen when you're weak? If your peace needs you to be good, what will happen when you're not? Peace of mind that depends on you will fail at the moment that you need it most, as soon as you do. So I want to invite you to do something slightly counterintuitive. I want to invite you to throw your full weight against your peace of mind. Can your peace of mind deal with everything that life has to throw at you? Can it handle a Monday morning and a Friday night? Can it cope with your to-do list and the bills that you're too scared to open? Can it cope with your student debt and your self-doubt? Can it cope with your loneliness and tiredness and anxiety and despair? Or how about this, if you want to go slightly deeper? Can it cope with your own selfishness and greed? Can it deal with the worst that life has to throw at you? When you're at your weakest and you're at your worst, will your peace of mind still be there for you? And if you're not sure, can I gently suggest that you should probably find out? Because if your peace of mind cracks under your weight, then the moment you realize that could be the moment it's too late. Throw your full weight at your peace of mind, because if it cracks, well, I want to suggest it's actually worthless to you. That's the problem. Now I want you to imagine a possibility. Imagine having a peace of mind that was stronger than you are. The sort of peace that didn't shake even if you did. The sort of peace that held together even when you are falling apart. Imagine having the sort of peace that could withstand the worst that life has to throw at you and the worst about yourself. Peace that held on to you even at your weakest and your worst. That is what is on offer in what we're going to read from John chapter 11 this evening, which I'm going to read in a few minutes' time. But before we read it, let me say just a couple of things by way of framing what we're going to read. Because to see the strength of the peace that these sentences, these verses will give us, we need to see the weight that they can hold up under. And if we want to find a peace that can cope even when we are not okay, we need to take a good look at what it is that is not okay about us. We need to face up to what our lives are like when we're at our weakest and worst. According to the Bible, there is a lot that is wrong with the world, and there is a lot that is wrong with us. Maybe you can relate. And when the Bible sums up everything that's wrong with humanity, it does it in this very short word, sin. And maybe we don't always realize just how serious that word is. So let me see if I can put it like this. Sin is kind of like the ultimate cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is when you seize what someone else has made, empty it of all the meaning that they gave it, and use it for your own self-centered purposes. And isn't that a little bit like we've treated whoever it was that made this world? We've entered this world and acted like it was ours for the taking without a thought for who made it and why. Human beings have taken what God made, emptied it of all the meaning he gave it, and used it for our own selfish purposes without acknowledging him or treating the world with the holy dignity it was made for. We are all guests of God's reality, but we've lived our lives as though this world, his world, should be taken apart and rearranged to revolve around me. Each one of us has treated the temple of this world like it's a temple in which I should be worshipped. And the Bible says, well, there's a day coming when God just isn't going to put up with that anymore. There's a day coming where we will be held to account for the ways we have lived our lives. Which means the worst problem facing us is probably quite a lot worse than many of us may have been willing to think. It isn't our predicted grades or our bank balance or how laughably bad we are at following our skincare routine. It's the possibility that we might be cut off from the God who made us. It's the possibility that the God who breathed life into us might ask for that breath back. So here's a couple of questions for us to discuss around our tables. Firstly, how would you sum up what's wrong with humanity? Secondly, to what extent do you see the seeds of those problems in your own heart? And thirdly, if there was a God, do you think he'd have the right to take his creation back from us? 4 or 5 minutes to discuss those questions on our tables. According to the Bible, the worst problem facing me is not my bank balance, it's the possibility that the one who made me might cut me off. And in fact, before it gets better, I'm afraid it still gets a little bit worse, because that isn't just what might happen to us, it's actually what justice demands. One of my heroes in life is a woman called Rachel Den Hollander. If you were here on Tuesday evening, I referred to her then. She was the lead witness in the case against the convicted child molester Larry Nassar. And I want to read a line from her victim impact statement, because I think what she says demonstrates why delivering justice would not be optional for God. Rachel was speaking to the judge in the courtroom at Nassar's sentencing when she said the following. She said, "I submit to you that the preeminent question in this case is how much is a little girl worth? How much is a young woman worth? Who is going to tell these little girls that what was done to them matters, that they are seen and valued, that they are not alone and they are not unprotected? And I could not do that, but we are here now, and today the message can be sent with the sentence you hand down. You can communicate to all these little girls and to every predator, to every little girl or young woman who is watching, how much a little girl is worth. I ask that you hand down a sentence that tells us that what was done to us matters, that we are known, we are worth everything, worth the greatest protection the law can offer, the greatest measure of justice available." That's the question that Rachel said the courtroom she was standing in had to answer. And if justice is ever to be done in this universe, well, one day, God will have to answer that question too. God, how much are little girls worth? How much are young women worth? God, what was the value of everything that human beings treated with such indignity? When you look at justice in the Bible, something quickly becomes apparent. The price that justice demands is proportional to the dignity of what's been mistreated. Mistreat someone's property, and that's bad. Mistreat an animal, and that's worse. Mistreat a human being, and that is unspeakably abhorrent. So think about this. What does justice demand from those of us who have neglected, ignored, or mistreated the God of heaven and earth? Before that judgment in that courtroom, well, none of us would have any right except to be reduced to nothing forever. So here's my question for us, just one question this time. Do you find the idea of a final day on which justice is done troubling or comforting or both? 3 or 4 minutes on our tables to discuss that question. The penalty or the price of sin is everlasting death. And if there is any justice in this world, well then that penalty, that price is unavoidable. And death will get the last word in each and every one of our lives. To quote the well-loved children's book, we can't go over it, we can't go under it, but the promise of Christianity is that Jesus will take us right through it with him if we follow him. Let me show you that in the words of Jesus. Reach into the middle of your tables and find a book that looks like this, that says John. It might not look exactly like mine. We've got them in English. I think most of the English ones are blue. We've also got them in simplified and traditional Chinese. Here's a traditional Chinese one. And once you've grabbed one of those, if you've got an English one, turn to page 36. Or if you've got a traditional Chinese one, turn to page 54. 36 in the English ones. And when you've found page 36 in the English one or 54 in the traditional Chinese one, give me a big smile so I know you're with me. Some lovely smiles there, thank you. Page 36, which is John chapter 11, and we're looking at the little 21 right at the top of the page, verse 21. Page 36, John chapter 11. Verse 21, words of Jesus where he is speaking to one of his followers, Martha, who knew firsthand what it was like for the weight of the world to crash straight through her peace of mind. Her brother had just died in the verses before this, which is a tragedy today, but for a woman in the first century, it was life-ending. Let's see, what does Jesus say to a woman who is locking eyes with the reality of death? Page 36, John chapter 11, the little 21 at the top of the page. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Let me read verse 25 one more time. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those words were spoken by Jesus to a woman in the teeth of devastation and grief, a woman locking eyes with the reality of the death that we all face, that we all deserve, a woman who knew firsthand that death makes a mockery of our peace of mind, showing up that we are hopeless on our own. And Jesus' words to her are words full of hope. They are words full of hope because they are words full of promise, resurrection promise. The promise that Jesus is stronger than death. The promise that Jesus can and will answer back to death. The promise that everything that dies in Jesus will one day be raised to life in him as well, because he is the resurrection and he is the life. But for Jesus to be the resurrection, well, first he needs to die. And if Jesus is going to be our resurrection, well, first he needs to die our death. Let me explain what I mean. If the Bible is to be believed, one day I'm going to stand before the God of heaven and earth in that courtroom and be asked to give an account for how I lived my life, how I used my time, how I used my money, how I treated the people around me, and how I treated the God who made me. Why I lied to the people who loved me, why I belittled the God who made me, why I treated people as objects and God as a nuisance. And after I've given an account for how I have lived, God will be asked a question. What does justice demand? How much are you and everything you made really worth? And at that point, well, I would have no right except to be diminished to nothing forever. But because I have taken refuge in Jesus, That is not what is going to happen. Instead, God will point to a hill outside Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, to the crucifixion of his son, Jesus Christ, the moment when Jesus died my death, when he willingly became a curse for me, and say that is how much a little girl is worth. That is what a human being is worth. That is the dignity due my name, the fullest measure of justice available. And instead of sending me to the depths of hell to pay for what I have done, he will welcome me into his home as a loved child forever, because justice has already been done. The price has already been paid. That's what Jesus means when he says in this verse that the one who believes in me will live even though they die. That's the promise of Jesus' resurrection. On the cross, Jesus went through hell for you without letting go of you. And after dying our death on our behalf, he walked out of his own tomb 3 days later, and he's inviting us to follow him. So that if you follow him, sin and death, hell and judgment will not get the last word in your life, because they have all been defeated and emptied by Jesus, the resurrection and the life. And that last word in your life now belongs to him. One of the hardest things about holding on to peace of mind during the pandemic was that we never seemed to know what the future would hold. Each day seemed to be braced against the next one. But because I've put my hope in Jesus, well, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I do know what forever holds. No death, no condemnation, only the sunshine of God's infinite love falling on my face forever and forever, as every tear is finally wiped away and death is put to death. Let me refer back to that 500-year-old question that we started with that I mentioned earlier, because, do you know, the authors actually put the question slightly stronger than I let on. Here was the question that they actually wrote. They said, what is your only comfort in life and in death? And can I be honest? If your answer to that question is, I can take whatever life has to throw at me, you are kidding yourself. I'd be willing to bet that most of us are barely able to cope with uni, let alone the judgment of God. But here's the reply that Christians wrote under that question 500 years ago, summarizing beliefs that Christians have held for millennia, summarizing the hope that we see in Jesus' words in this book. Question, what is your only comfort in life and in death? Answer, that I am not my own, but belong body and soul, in life and in death, to my faithful Saviour, Jesus Christ. Let me speak from personal experience and say that is the sort of peace that not even the threat of heart failure can rob you of. That is a refuge that can take the worst that life has to throw at you, because my heart may fail, but my Jesus will never fail me. The answer continues. Jesus has fully paid for all my sins with his precious blood and has set me free from the tyranny of the devil. He also watches over me in such a way that not a hair can fall from my head without the will of my Father in heaven. In fact, all things must work together for my salvation. Friends, I still have a heart condition, but my heart doesn't get the last word in my life. Jesus does. And I want to suggest that injury and death and loss and judgment, well, they don't deserve the last word over your life either. Your to-do list and the bills that you're too scared to open, your student debt and your self-debt, friends, none of these things deserve the last word over your life. Loneliness and tiredness, anxiety and despair, selfishness and greed do not deserve the last word over your life. Jesus does. And his word for you, if you will take it, is resurrection and life, which leaves each one of us with this question. Will you give the last word over your life to him? Okay, a final set of questions for us to discuss around our tables. Firstly, do you believe that there is a power stronger than death in this world? Secondly, when you die, if you were asked why God should let you into heaven, what do you think you'd say? And finally, what would you need to know if you were going to give Jesus the last word in your life? 4 or 5 minutes on our tables to discuss those questions. If I cut you off, do continue that conversation afterwards. I think that would be a fascinating one to continue. As I wrap up, it strikes me that there probably are a variety of ways that you might be responding to what we've seen of Jesus this evening. And I wonder whether it might just be helpful to visualize that for a moment or two. If you can, imagine a scale with me going from one end of this room to the other, the full width of this room. On my right, your left over here beneath this beautiful tree, maybe if you're standing here, you are just all in already. You've been to everything the CU has ever put on. You're sharing your hope in Jesus with anyone who will listen. But then over on this side of the room, right over on that side of the wall, way up against that wall, maybe you are just totally disinterested. Actually, you'd run straight through that wall if you could. Can I say, if that's you, thank you for coming. Your friend really appreciates it. What I'd want to say to you is keep this in mind. And if the day comes when what you've put your hope in cracks under the weight of your life, even if that's in 20 years from now, remember some of what we saw about Jesus this evening. Maybe at that point you'll want to reconsider the Jesus that you've turned your back on today. And let me say, if you do, even if it's in 30 or 40 years' time, he will still be there and his arms will still be open. Maybe you're not over against that wall, you're a couple of steps towards the middle. If that's you, I want to invite you to keep exploring. I want to invite you to get to know the Jesus who walked into history. Throw your weight at him and see if he can take it. What I want to suggest is that I want to ask you what you would need to know in order to make your mind up about him. Work out what you would need to know about Jesus in order to make your mind up about him. Turn that sentence into a question, and then write that question at the front of one of these books. Read through it and see where it takes you. And actually, I'd suggest doing that with a friend as well. But maybe you're in the middle, maybe somewhere around these columns. You've seen enough of Jesus to know that you're hopeless without him, and you're ready to take your first steps towards following Jesus, giving him the last word of your life. Look, I can't help myself this evening. I want to invite you to do that now. Following Jesus is only ever a prayer away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say a prayer from the front. And if you want to make that prayer your own, you can just repeat that in the quietness and silence of your own heart, echoing that along in your own heart. Let me tell you what I'm going to say in advance. I'm going to say this. Lord Jesus, I am hopeless without you. I'm sorry for trying to live my life without you. And I'm giving you the last word over my life now. Please, would you help me to live for you tonight, tomorrow, and forever? Just for those 1 or 2 people who are in this room who want to do that, let's just all have a moment of silence while I pray that, so we can respect those people who want to echo that silently in their own hearts as I pray for us. I'll leave a gap after each sentence so you can echo that in the silence of your own heart. Lord Jesus, I am hopeless without you. I'm sorry for trying to live my life without you. I'm giving you the last word over my life now. Please, would you help me to live for you tonight, tomorrow, and forever? Amen.
Thanks so much, everyone, for filling those cards in. Someone will be around at the end to collect them from your table so that we can meet up with you and support you best. Thank you as well, Ollie, for talking to us tonight. It was, really encouraging, helpful. There's a couple of things just before we end. First of all, this event was recorded today and there were photos taken. If you have a problem with that, if you don't want your photo on our social media, do just come to speak to either of us at the end or speak to someone in blue and we can talk that through and make sure that you don't appear.
Yeah, and the other thing is obviously tonight we opened up the Gospel of John, so feel free to take home a version as well as the traditional Chinese version if you'd like that. And if you want to, talk to whoever brought you tonight or someone from the CU on your table, and I'm sure they'll be very happy to read it with you outside this space.
Now, sadly, this is the last talk of Events Week, which is very sad. But the fun does not end here, I'm so glad to say. You should all have on your table one of these cards, the search. Can I have a couple of people wave to me so I can see you've got some? Great. So every Thursday for the next 4 Thursdays, we're going to be continuing things like this. We're going to be exploring more about who Jesus is. We're going to be continuing discussions of what we've started this week. There'll be free food again and very similar layouts to how it's been here. So it's going to be every Thursday, starting from next Thursday in the Faith and Reflection Centre, and we'd love to see you all there. Apart from that, I think that is the end. But do stick around. Feel free to discuss more. There'll be tea, coffee, and cake that will be brought to you. Enjoy the discussions, and it's been lovely to see you all.